Whoops.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday. Sorry for the slight delay in getting started, but we're happy to be here. Today, I'm going to be talking with the wonderful Dr. Jean Latting all about how to create change and leadership. She has so much research, history, and wisdom to share with all of you. We'll be getting to that here in just a moment. In the meantime, I should let you know who I am in case you don't know. My name is Amy Vaughn, and I am the CEO of a wonderful organization called Together Digital. Every week we come together to feature women who rock, women who are doing amazing things to empower and support one another, because that's what our community is all about. So if you aren't a member, check out our website, www.togetherindigital.com. We have chapters across the country, 1,000 women who work in digital, advertising, marketing, and design across the country. We have monthly events within our local chapters, national summits. We have an amazing online community. And the coolest thing about our organization, I believe, is that how we show up for one another. And we do that through a process called Ask and Give. Anytime our member needs anything whatsoever, personal or professional, nothing is off the table. It's all completely confidential. We provide space and community for you to come forward and ask for what you need without any sense of guilt or shame, and the ability to give. It always feels good to give, right? It's hard to ask, but it feels good to give. So we always look to try to find ways to balance asking and giving consistently. So if you're looking for more of a sense of community, especially during these times when it's virtual and you don't believe that networking and creating meaningful, lasting relationships is possible while virtual, I challenge you to check out our group, sign up, and learn more, because I've seen it. The last year, I've watched it every single day happen. So without any further ado, I want to bring Jean on with me. Oh, and by the way, I have to, I get so excited because I want to jump straight to the content. I'm always so excited about our guests. I also want to make sure that you all let us know where you're listening from. So Deb already is she's on cue. She knows what's happening. So waves from ATX, that's great. We've got listeners from Texas, usually folks from across the world. So definitely drop us a line and let us know where are you listening from. But then also let us know if you have any questions at any time. Please drop them into the chat. We want this to feel as much of a conversation as it possibly can, so that you all can get the most out of the time that we spend here today with Jean. Jean, again, thank you so much for being with us here today.
Well, thank you. I'm delighted.
So you are you're the president of Leading Consulting, and you Leading Consciously, thank you, and professor at the University of Houston. And you also are a consultant, a researcher, and educator who focuses on leadership in multicultural organizations. And you also co-authored a book, Reframing Change: How to Deal with the Workplace Dynamics, Influence Others, and Bring People Together to Initiate Change. I love everything about that title. Because it's just, I feel like no matter where I've been in my career, no matter what I've been doing, that's kind of the philosophy and mindset I've always had. So I loved, reading more. I would recommend that all of you go check out her Leading Consciously site and her blog. There's a lot more content on top of what Jean's going to share with us today. But first, Jean, why don't you let everybody even know maybe a little bit more about yourself and how you came to be so passionate yourself about leadership and change.
Okay, so let's see. I can't remember ever not being passionate about leadership and change. I grew up in the segregated South, and so everything was about change. How do we eradicate the segregation laws. As a
Mhm.
child, I remember lying on the floor listening to the adults talk about strategies and
Mhm.
what was possible and who was leading what actions to get things desegregated. I was an avid reader as a child, and all my books were about heroes who were trying to save little children from being trampled by bad adults or whatever, and trying to forge a new territory. So I just grew up with change.
Mhm. Yeah, I could only imagine all of that influence. And then I do think sometimes too, people do seem to be born into that mindset and that mentality of always moving forward. In fact, I need to go back and look at it. But on LinkedIn yesterday, I had shared and asked people sort of what kind of animal are you when it comes to change. Did you see the post?
No, I didn't.
I
But
don't know. I wanted to go ahead.
my favorite character
Uh-huh.
when I was a child was Lad, a dog who was a collie.
Uh-huh. Oh, I love collies. My mom had collies growing up, and she had such tremendous stories because they are really like brave protectors, and just really, really, really sweet breed. I'm trying to find the post really quickly. And so I asked people like, what kind of animal are you when it comes to change? Because, you know, my personal professional experience, everyone's a little bit different. And so I'm going to give you the options, Jean. We're going to start off with a little bit more of a even more fun question at the start. And
Okay.
I want to know which animal you are. So the animals that I had were, when it comes to change, what kind of animal are you? Butterfly, meaning kind of from the chrysalis to the little caterpillar to the butterfly, I go big. The elephant, I'm a little stubborn about it. Rabbit, always ready to go. Or the tortoise, maybe a little slow to start, but you get there.
Okay, so I will have to say rabbit because the butterfly dies. They go through all
Jean,
go
I
through
love the way your mind works.
with the ultimate goal of death.
Right?
so, so at least death is not written into the rabbit script.
Right. No, right? They're changing to survive too, you know?
Yes,
That's
yes.
like, oh, that's such a good point. I love that. I knew you'd have a good, deep, thoughtful answer to that. Rabbit, ready to go, and butterfly both tied when we did it, our poll in LinkedIn. And we got like 40 different votes on it. And I just posted it up at the end of the day yesterday. I was like trying to think of a fun way to talk about change. And I just thought, I don't know what inspired me, but it was very interesting. So awesome. As we begin, go ahead.
I'm gonna find it and I'll post it on my LinkedIn page.
Yeah,
Let's see if I get different answers.
And we'll get to that maybe a little bit here soon too, because I think those of you who are listening, you know, you probably relate to one of those animals. But I also think something that I've been learning through reading some of your stuff, Jean, is really being open and perceptive to how other people really do perceive and handle change. But we'll get to that here in a bit.
Okay.
But first, you know, as we're going to be talking about influencing change, I want to frame it up so our listeners understand and we're really clear on what sort of change it is that we're focusing on and we're talking about today.
Okay, so I don't narrow it down. Personal change, community change, organizational change, systems change goes through very similar stages, no matter at what level and no matter at what setting.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess that's the good thing about it then. That's awesome. That's awesome. And as far as change goes, because it's so wide reaching, but then there, like you said, there are sort of evolutionary steps that sort of mirror one another, regardless of the kind of change.
Yeah.
What are some common, you know, misconceptions that people might have about either change or even initiating change, depending upon where they are?
Okay, so I'm going to give you several. Okay, here's one. She said she was going to change, and then she's doing the same thing all over again.
Yeah.
She hasn't really changed. She doesn't mean it. She claimed she was going to change. So that misconception is the belief that intellectually wanting something, understanding something, is the same thing as being able to carry out that action consistently. Right? You got to first be aware, then you have to desire it, then you have to know how to get it, then you have to know when you're not doing it, and then you have to be able to maintain it.
Right.
Right. So there's a long gap between I want to change and I'm carrying off this change each and every time the opportunity presents itself. So that's one. Another misconception is if they don't change, they must not care, or else they're selfish, or else they're stupid. So she's not changing, therefore I'm going to form a negative assumption about this person. We have to first, is the person aware of the change? Is the change you're talking about the same as the change they're talking about? Are we even referring to the same thing? And each person has their own story. Each person is a hero, shero in their own story, right? So from their vantage point, what they're doing is perfectly logical and reasonable. Even if they know they want to change, it's logical and reasonable to sit on the couch eating chocolates rather than going to the gym because I'm tired. I had a hard day. I have a headache. I'm not going to the gym. I know I'm supposed to go to the gym. I said I was going to the gym, but I have a headache. I'm tired. I put in a hard day. And so I'm not going. So that's logical to that person. So let's see, that's two. A third is, I've hinted at it. What I mean and what they mean are the same thing. In my coaching and consulting practice, one of the questions I ask teams are, what does it mean to be on time?
Yeah.
Be on time.
That's a great one. Yeah.
What's that? For some people, that's no more than 15 minutes late. And for other people, that means no more than half a second late.
Right.
And there are variations in between. So you said you were going to be on time. I was on time. I was only 5 minutes late.
Yep.
Right. So that's another one. So that's a good 3.
That is a great example. It actually reminded me of a story a former coworker once told me about how he was at odds with a roommate and they were clashing over the fact that, the trash can, over taking out the trash. And the other roommate was like, you were like the rudest roommate I've ever lived with. And this coworker of mine, who was like the sweetest man you've ever met, very intentional, very thoughtful, was like, oh my gosh, what do you mean? Like, I'm so sorry. I don't understand. He's like, you never take out the trash. He was like, but it's never full all the way. He's like, yeah, because I empty it. He's like, okay, well, what is full to you? And the roommate was like 3/4 of the way. Like, even when it's half full, like I'm all ready to like take it out. And Danielle, my former coworker, was like, oh, full to me is kind of like the lid won't go down. And so like, that's such a great example of like understanding, if you want to create change and see change, what change looks like and the end result might look a little different to everyone. And if you're not creating some sort of level set playing field or having a good understanding of what everybody defines as that change, then some people might think, oh, well, yeah, we're there. We're good. The trash doesn't need to be taken out. And somebody else is like, it is overflowing. We've got a crisis. It's disgusting. It's so, so funny though. I love that. I think that's really smart. So the first misconception is that I want to change, but the steps between that and actual change of being aware, desiring change, how to institute change, when and maintain. I think that's really important. I think knowing like we have a goal-getters workshop that's happening later today, actually. And it was interesting. We did it in the first quarter. We're coming back from a second quarter and listening to how each of these women sort of talk about how they tried to institute change. And I'm going to talk about that framework a little bit to say like, where did you fall down? Like you were aware you needed to change. You had the desire you needed to change. Did you figure out the when and the how? And then how are you maintaining? Because it's one of those things we like to think that it's just like I turn a button or I flip a switch and change is done. I don't have to do anything about it. But I think the point that you made there so well is that change is a kind of an ongoing maintenance. It's an ongoing thing where we can't just set it and forget it. So that is absolutely wonderful. I love that. Oh, it takes some time and some work. Those are great misconceptions. Another thing that I hear, excuse me, from our members and coworkers a lot of times is, when they're in a place or a position, whether it's at work, and let's, for the sake of this instance, let's use the example of work. If they're at work and they want to institute some sort of process change that's maybe big, or cultural change, do they have to be a leader in order to kind of initiate that change?
By definition of initiating the change, they become a leader of that change. So do they have to start off define themselves as a leader? No. Does the organization have to recognize them as a leader? No. If I'm going to initiate a change, I'm leading something. I'm leading the change. Even if I'm not the one who gives final approval, still it was my idea. I'm putting my time and my energy behind it. I'm a leader.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I think ever since I was a young kid as well, it was always like, I want to save the environment. I want to help the elderly in our neighborhood. Like, what am I going to do? Am I going to do a fundraiser? Am I going to bring the kids together? We're going to go around and wash cars. And everybody would say, you know, as younger, they're like, oh, she's such a little leader. So I think that is, you know, it is initiating change is an opportunity to step into that space of being a leader, because, you know, it's not based on title. It's definitely, I aligned with you, Jean. I agree with you that it's based on actions.
Yes, it's based and mindset. And mindset. You had a mindset as a child that you could make things happen. You saw injustice, you saw opportunity, and you had a mindset, I can step into this space. So that's the biggest hurdle for many people. They might see it, but they don't believe they can step into the space doing something about it.
I have a question about that then. I mean, because again, like, you know, I don't know if it's like a generational thing. I was like a firstborn, and there's just certain things about like my nature that definitely made me that way. But I definitely empathize with those who are maybe listening who don't feel that confidence when you're kind of coaching and mentoring people who want to sort of step into that leadership space. What's some advice that you might give them if they're uncomfortable with it?
Visualization is the first one, but some people can't visualize. So role models. So, okay, so you look and see someone and say, oh, I wish I could do that. Oh, I love the way she's doing that. Oh, I wish I had that. By definition of recognizing it and wanting it, it means it's in you.
Yeah.
It's already there, because if it weren't there, it wouldn't stand out to you. You wouldn't even notice it.
That's a good point.
So you already have it. So now the next step is then how do you convince yourself you can do it? And do that by tiny steps. So logically, I'm not a leader. I can't do that. I could never do what Alice does, not me. But if I were Alice, and there's this thing that I see needs to happen in the organization. If I were Alice, what's one thing Alice might do? Well, she might go talk to Patrice and see what Patrice says. So even though I can't do it, I will go talk to Patrice.
Yeah.
So you just talk your way into it using some role model out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And guideposts, and do what that person would do.
Yeah.
I've had people said, Jean, I had no idea what to do. So I said, what would Jean do?
Right.
And then they do whatever it is they think I might do.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they're right or wrong, because it just gets them into action.
It does. Well, and like you said, it's mindset, right? It puts you into the mindset of somebody that you aspire to or are inspired by. I used to do that all the time with one of my former bosses and creative directors. So brilliant, always had amazing, like, far-fetched, but somehow very strategic ideas. And I was working in advertising at the time. And so I would always be like, what would Jeff Stamp do?
That's it. That's how we do it.
Yeah. It got me to be a little bit bolder and a little bit more like, just like less questioning my ideas and going for the more outlandish, but then finding some grounding in it and be like, yay. So I think that's great advice. I guess I was doing it without realizing it though.
Yeah.
But I do know
humans are born to imitate.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think too that, I think there's so much about how we perceive ourselves based on how we think others see us too, you know, and then even when people assume I am not a leader because they think that a leader needs to be, you know, masculine or aggressive, right? Yeah, it's like the chest pounding and all that, or just loud. Like leaders don't have to be loud. I think that's the other thing I love about where a leadership has begun to evolve to as it becomes more diverse, is that, you know, it's not the atypical type leadership that you see. So you can start to see how the qualities of, you know, quietness and listening are kind of moving up in the space of leadership versus loudness and always having the answers as well, I think. So
There's a book called The Introverted Leader.
Oh, okay. I like that.
Particularly for the type of person you're talking about. There are many styles of being effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely. I have to check that out. I was going to say, I love that. I like to say that I'm an introverted extrovert. I think I'm perceived very much as an extrovert because of just the way I can come across, but I absolutely need my quiet and introverted time. And I wear out from people and quite quickly. So I'm sure that there's others out there that maybe relate. If I am looking to create some change, we talked a second ago. Okay, now that I have I see something in my workplace, I want to institute a change. I'm looking to emulate. I'm thinking other leaders that I might emulate. Kind of where do I go from there? Where else could I start? How else can I begin to build that change around me?
Okay, so you want to, first of all, I call it the next right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Change happens one action at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So back to myths. One myth is it should happen in my time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Happen in the way I want it to happen. It should. I see the change, and so it should be, and just the way I want it to be, just when I think I want it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And if it has not happened, if it's partially there, if we take some steps and it's partially there, and then someone says, "Did the change happen?" Well, no, because we're not 100% at this point.
Right.
When in fact the change did happen, you're 20% of the way there. That 20% is a real change.
Right.
So to answer your question, you do it one action at a time.
Mm-hmm.
What's the next right thing?
Mm-hmm.
Do that. Then what's the next right thing? And you
Right.
do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine in founding this podcast, you're thinking this is an idea in your head.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what was the one thing you did once the idea came? Just one thing.
Went and found amazing women like yourself to come and speak.
Uh-huh.
Went and found amazing women like yourself to come and share their stories.
Okay. So, and then what did you do?
Put together our promotional material to help bring in listeners.
In between step 1 and step 2, was there a lot of anxiety?
Yeah, actually, because I didn't initiate the series. Our founder did. I had to come in and take it over. So there was absolutely a lot of anxiety because it wasn't something I was used to doing at all.
Right. So between each step, we take
Mm-hmm.
that step and then we go into anxiety because we say, and then we discount. Well, anybody could have done what I just did.
Right.
It was easy. And then we're anxious about the next step. It's like when my daughter was 5, heading into first grade, she had a friend who was in the second grade heading into third, and her sister was 5th grade heading into 6th.
Uh-huh.
So the daughter says, "I'm going into first grade. It's going to be so hard." And the second grader said, "What? First grade is easy. I'm going into fifth grade. That's going to be really hard." And then the 5th grader said, "Y'all are both crazy. I'm going into middle school. That's really tough." And so from their little vantage point of what the step they had taken, the next step was terrifying.
Right.
So we accept that.
Mm-hmm.
Accept that. You don't know how to do it.
Yeah. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. It feels like you're not making any sort of changes if you don't feel a little bit uncomfortable. I definitely have learned that over the last year where I've just had to dig down and push myself, or I've seen our members even dig down and push themselves through things that felt uncomfortable. And now it's like, I feel like I wouldn't do these in my sleep because I love them and enjoy them so much, but I could in my sleep because it's just like we have a process down and it works well. And then we talk about changing it and I'm like, no, it's okay. But I do love, you're right. I think the next right thing is wonderful advice. I have 2 young children, and so it harkens to the whole Frozen 2 song, which is not going to be stuck in my head the rest of the day, but that's okay because it's a great song. And I love that kids are getting that message, the next right thing. I was just wanting to comment too. Deb had noted that she wants to read that introverted leadership book. She said she read the book Quiet, helped her so much on helping to understand herself and others. And then Servant Leadership was also a great read. So I'm kind of curious as to your perspective and thoughts on servant leadership. And could you help define that maybe for our listeners if they're not familiar with what that is?
Sure. Okay, so leadership has gone through an evolution since the industrial age into the service age and now in the information age. The servant leadership philosophy came mostly out of the service industry when women left their homes and moved into all these telephone operators, school teaching, and other professions. So the question is, do I report to my employees, people who are under me, or do they report to me? The servant, who's supposed to be serving whom? Are they there for my women pleasure to carry out my orders, or am I here to help them facilitate doing their jobs? So servant leadership, when it came out, was revolutionary. The idea that the manager, their job was actually to facilitate the employees doing their jobs.
Yeah.
If you've hired people who are good, they want your support and help to shine. They don't want you in their way. So servant leaders understand that. So you define the framework. Here's the playground we're playing in. Here are the rules of the playground. Here's where the balls are. Here's where the swing set is. We don't punch. We don't kick. Everybody got the rules. Now go get it. Go play. That's servant leadership. And if you need help, come ask me. Or if there's a nail in the swing set, come tell me. I'll help you get rid of the nail that's sticking out of the swing set. You tell me what you need to get the job done, and I will help you achieve that.
Yeah. I love it. I am personally such a fan of servant leadership, and I'm so glad as far as a management style, leadership style, it has come more and more into fruition, and it's proving successful, right? You know, the research is showing that as far as retention and acquisition of new talent, things like that, just people being happier in their workplace and things like more balanced work and life through servant leadership, I think is just tremendous. So it gets me really excited to hear that people are talking about it more.
Yeah. Well,
awesome.
You're going to ask a question because I was going to make another comment.
Oh, please do.
Today's workplace won't put up with a lot of finger pointing, all of dictatorial leadership. And so part of the reason it does support retention, as you're saying, is because today's people's workplace have access to information on their own. They don't need to go ask the manager any little thing. They go to Google. They get their own answers. And so it doesn't work to order people around.
Definitely. I've definitely lived in the experience in my years of working both, and I definitely know which for me has been most preferable. I don't know many people who prefer the more authoritarian dictator ask. I think that those tend to me, at least observationally, are the folks who are just still more enamored with like charisma, you know, and the kind of the perception of power and things like that. So yeah, no, I definitely feel that. And then as far as community, do you have any advice for our listeners if they're looking to sort of start to begin to create change within their community? Because I think sometimes too, that can feel intimidating or complicated.
Community change Organizational change is too, but community change really is one conversation at a time.
Mm.
Who are the power brokers? Who are the faith leaders? Who is the person on your block that everybody turns to?
Mm-hmm.
Most neighborhoods have one or two people who know everything that's going on.
Yeah.
So that person can give you a world of advice on how to get the change you're thinking about happen. And if you get this person on your side, doors will open.
Mm-hmm.
So, ask the person, I'm thinking of this, or is that a problem for you? What do you think needs to happen? And who do I need to talk with?
Mm-hmm.
And so each person will tell you somebody else to go talk with, and you
Yeah.
just go make your rounds, talk to everybody. And then at some point you'll say, I've talked with all these folks and we've talked. Maybe we should meet and talk about this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll say, that's a good idea, because they've given you their ideas. They see possibility. So, yeah, let's meet. So then you show up with an agenda. So not a rambling conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's what's the problem, who's involved in the problem, what are the possibilities, it just has to be an agenda. If you show up with a rambling conversation, and for a rambling conversation, they will get mad and feel you wasted their time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They need to see what's on the agenda, and at the end of the meeting, they need to know something was accomplished.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll know something was accomplished because things that were on the agenda actually happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was a community organizer.
That's so great. I love that, because I mean, you're 100% right. I wrote that down too. That might end up being a social post later. Is community change is one conversation at a time, because it sometimes happens that way. You're standing in the grocery store line chatting with somebody. You're standing across the way talking to a neighbor, and you come across a common thread, problem, issue. And sometimes you're like, I want to do something, but I don't even know where to start. And so you kind of just walk away from it, or you continue the conversation, or you move on to something else. So this actually makes me think, well, the next time I have one of those conversations, I know a little bit more what to do. Ask more people about it. Have one more conversation about it. Like you said, find those people of power and influence to continue to have those conversations until you can have that meeting. And I love the agenda idea. I think anytime I've had to kind of call people together to, even like in an organization, outside of community, change, I have always had not just the agenda, but the objective of the meeting in mind, and saying, this is what I want us to leave with today. And then I also think about how I want everybody to feel when they leave. Like, how do I want to leave people feeling? Yes. So that I kind of keep that in mind, and I don't just like tick off because I'm a very much a to-do list person. I'm like, okay, we talked about all these things. All right, bye. But if I'm really cognizant and thinking about how do I want people to leave here feeling, especially if it is about, initiating some sort of change, you obviously want them to feel inspired, empowered, motivated, and knowing what to do next.
Emotions go on the agenda.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
On the agenda is, how do we want to feel when we leave this meeting?
Mm-hmm.
That's an agenda item.
Mm-hmm.
Another agenda item is, what are the obstacles that scare us or that we wonder we can't move past?
Mm-hmm.
What are the things that we can bring to bear? How can we overcome these barriers? What resources do we have access to? All of that is on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
People have a very narrow definition of agenda.
Yeah.
If you open it up to include emotions and hopes and fears.
Yeah. Oh.
Deb said emotions go on the agenda. I love it.
I love it. I wrote that down too. That's a keeper. Oh, that's so cool. Because I think that's the other thing too, as you're talking, I've realized over time, when I'm trying to initiate change, getting others to come along with me is a challenge. Do you have any thoughts, ideas, advice there? I mean, definitely emotions on the agenda feels like that should be on that list, but is there anything else you would add?
Sure. So you want Susie to come along with you. And Susie says, I'm not so sure, and I don't know, and I have kids and this and that. So, okay, so Susie, I understand you're busy. There's several techniques, but here's one.
Yeah.
Susie, I understand you're busy, but if I get Dick and Jane and Juanita, if they agree to come on board, will you come on board?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, if you get them, but you're not going to get them. So then you go to each one. If I get Susie and Dick and Jane,
That's so smart.
will you come on board? Well, yeah. And then you just find out who they need to see on board.
Uh-huh.
And then you go to that person and ask them about everybody else. And then everybody will agree they'll come if so-and-so will come. And then there you have it. So that's one of the techniques.
I like it. I like it a lot. I just realized that's totally how I ended up being next year's PTO president.
What happened?
So I was the secretary for this last year, for the last 2 years. And, I'm a working mom. My daughter had just gone to kindergarten. And I was like, I would love to find ways to meet more parents. And her kindergarten teacher and I got to talking about like my work and what I did. And she was just like, oh, you'd be great on the PTA or PTO. And I'm like, I don't know. And so they had secretary open and then I did it. And then they needed a president or vice president this year to be president next year. And I was just like, I'm so busy. Like, I do love helping the community. I love being part of the things with the kids. Like, I love getting to know the teachers and the other parents and the kids more, but I just don't think I'll have the time. And they were like, well, because it's a special year with everything happening with COVID, we're going to bring in the last 3 presidents to be a special committee for whoever is president. I was just like, well, if they're all going to do that, they totally got me. Jean, it works. You're right. It totally works.
You reduce barriers. People work on the wrong end of a change. They work on the promotion end. Here's why it's important. Here's the benefits. Yeah. That's not what's going to produce the change. You work on reducing barriers to change.
Yeah.
So a barrier to change is you're too busy. Here are 3 people who have expertise. They will help you.
Yeah.
Now, what else do you need?
Exactly. No, and I'm definitely, I would not have said yes without those 3. And I feel tremendously more comforted by it. And then also excited too, because, it's going to be it's going to be the next school year. So it's going to be the first year out of the, outside of COVID. So we'll have some normalcy back to all of that. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'll keep you posted, Jean. I'm sure you're curious to hear about my PTO adventures.
It's wonderful. I think it's wonderful how they enticed you in.
They did. And I mean, again, like I said, I love being a part with the school district that we're in is wonderful. I love being a part of the community. I do coaching as well. I coach kids soccer and stuff. So it brings me joy. So the fact that they were all willing to kind of come together and have a special committee for it did make it feel very honoring. But I think you're exactly right. Like, and honestly, for all the times I've tried to institute change or bring people together for things like that, I've never thought of that strategy. But I know it works because it worked on me. And 2, I'm going to use it in the future. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, all of you who are listening, again, don't be shy. I know you're dropping comments into the comments. So that's wonderful. Want to hear what you're thinking. If you're agreeing, I know everybody was also liking emotions go on the agenda for sure as a bit of advice. But if you have any questions specifically for Jean about making change, creating change, struggles with trying to initiate change, like let us know what your questions are. Jean, how, we kind of talked a little bit about, and it might come back to some of the answers you've given, but I have it listed as a question. But if I'm part of a larger system or an organization, so kind of going back to organizational change specifically, how can I impact change if I do not feel that I am a person of influence within that space or organization?
Well, that just goes back to mindset again. There's a big debate on how much does top-down change actually work. And there's been some research that says truly top-down change does not work. Change that's bottom up and then eventually endorsed by the leader is the top person is the most long-lasting change. But these bright ideas from up on high that
Yeah.
people saying they're supposed to filter down, by the time it starts filtering down, people saying, oh, he's got another bright idea.
Right.
Doing what I've always done.
Right.
So
That makes a lot of
people,
sense.
it's so ironic. People wait, well, it takes the leader to do something. If it takes the boss to do something, if he won't do it, nothing will ever happen. Then he says, do it. And everybody says, who are you trying to order me around? So the whole thing is backwards. Instead, wherever you are, do the next right thing. One conversation, hold one conversation at a time, reduce barriers, and just keep plodding away. And eventually you will have enough of a foundation that you can go to Mr. Head Boss and say, Mr. Head Boss, look at all of these people. We've been meeting and talking, and we really think this is important. Is this something you can endorse? Well, I don't know if we have the time for this. Okay, well, let's talk about time and how we can make this reduce obstacle. So that's how it happens. That is likely to produce lasting change.
Well, that makes a lot of sense too, because in my personal experience, it's been, it's always a challenge when you're being asked to institute somebody else's change that maybe you don't quite understand or haven't bought into yet, but also when it's top down, a lot of times they don't have visibility or understanding of the true impacts of change.
Yes.
So it's like, wow, you think you just asked me to do something really simple, but in fact, it's going to require all of us to completely change our processes and like certain aspects of what we do day in and day out. And that's always really hard. So I think to your point, when it's coming sort of from within, that the motivation is there because people want to see the change. And then two, they probably have a better understanding of the implications of creating said sweeping changes. I think that's been one thing too that's like always gets my goat when it comes to certain kinds of leaders. They're like, let's just do this, and they throw it out there like it's nothing. And it's like walking out of your house one morning, turning around and saying, oh, I don't like that window in my house. Let's just take down the whole house and rebuild it, right? And you can have that by the time I'm back home tonight. Sure. It's like, no, it takes so much more than that. To just, and you don't need to change the whole house for one window sometimes either, by the way. But yeah.
There's two people. The people who often rise to the top have their great ideas and no time sense of how long it takes to get there. And then the people who can implement really well, they see all of the steps. They may not be able to articulate the great vision. So everybody has their own place in it.
Oh, definitely. No, I agree. You need those people who can kind of shoot for the moon, and then those folks who can ground their feet and say like, yeah, but first this has to happen. Because like you said, it's the next right thing. It's one step at a time. It's small changes. It's one conversation at a time. I think it's hard. We all hunger sometimes for seeing immediate effective change, but the reality is it's not going to happen that way. Over your years of experience and the things that you've been coaching on, what has been one of the most surprising things for you to learn about creating change and or growing as a leader?
That most people are terrified. Everybody can look at somebody else and think, oh, she's just doing this so beautifully. She's handling it so well. And they look at celebrities. Oh, they have it together. And look at how luxurious their clothing and their hair and their makeup. And they just have it so together. And then they hear that that very same person is getting a divorce or a triangle, or just didn't get a job, a job they wanted, or whatever. So the most surprising thing is the most high up folks also are afraid. And that everybody wants to be recognized for their contributions. That's the other thing. People wait for the boss to recognize them. And when in organizations, I say, flow it up. You just wanted all the good stuff to trickle down. flow it back up. They need to know that what they just did was wonderful. One of my former deans sent an email and said, I've arranged, we're in a austerity moment, but the faculty got this percentage raise. So I sent her a thank you note. Told me later that I was the only person on the faculty who did that.
Aw. Yeah.
Now imagine being a dean, fighting for something for your faculty. You just casually, because she can't boast and say, oh, look at I did. I'm great. She can't do that. So just a low key, this is coming, and one person acknowledges.
Yeah. No, that's so lovely. That's sweet. Yeah. I think that always, those kinds of things catch you off guard sometimes when they do happen, because you're kind of not used to having those things acknowledged. So that is wonderful. But like you said, looking for those things and calling them out yourself, modeling the behavior, emulating the behavior and things like that, I think definitely. Talk to the group, because we don't have any questions coming in right now, but everybody's hanging tight and listening. So I want to use up the time that we've got. Tell the group a little bit more about your book and Leading Consciously and your website and the work you're doing there.
Okay. My book is about how to change, and it was built through my academic research, because human beings fascinate me, and I spent decades reading and researching about why people act this way and not that way. So it's built on academic research. It's built on practical experience. I read practitioners, what they're doing. I try out things. I'm an experimenter. And then I see if it works in my own life. And then I test it out. And then I bring it to my classes. So it's built on theory and personal practice, and then practice in various settings. So my co-worker and my colleague and I came up with a list of 18 skill sets that we thought every leader should have. And notice, I remember I have a very broad definition of leader. A leader is somebody who thinks they want to lead something. So we came up with 18 skill sets. Everybody said, that's nice. I don't know if I can do 18 different things. So we condensed it down to 6 skill sets. And that's the skill sets that I teach from. What I've just talked to you from is the chapter on initiating change in the book. And if anybody reads the book, they will see elements of what I've said here. What I worked on was timeless skills, timeless steps, because of the nature of human beings, not subject to this era or that era, the machine era, the information era, but human beings being human beings, what's likely to work. And so the skills that are in initiating change were used by the revolutionaries in getting rid of the British from the United States, literally.
So that stuff still works, huh?
Yes, I didn't want anything that wouldn't last. I
right. Yeah, no, that's wonderful.
No, this is pretty much the way it is. So what I did from that, once the book is published, then I started offering workshops on different chapters of different things. And now what we're offering is I have 2 online programs. I started online pre-COVID, by the way. I started moving online.
Good for you.
And then COVID came, and I said, what am I, is the universe listening to me or what?
Yeah, you had good instinct.
Yes. And so one is a membership program. It's $35 a month. It's focused on racial and social justice. I originally had been planned to focus specifically on that, but obviously that's what I get calls for more and more and more. And so I said, okay, I'm going to go for that. So it's Leadership for Racial and Social Justice Pathfinders. People read the blog, do homework exercises, have a discussion about the blog and their lives and how they're applying it, and then come to a once every 2 weeks coaching call. $35 a month. It's with small but mighty. And the people who are involved are heavily involved. We got some interesting, and people are disclosing. It's on your own time, which is the advantage.
Mm-hmm.
We're heading into a launch for the more intensive 9-month course where we will dig into each of the 6 major skill sets in the book, learn them and practice them. So let me just recite them just so. Testing assumptions, and by that I mean testing negative assumptions. That person's a jerk, they don't care about me, and now I'm supposed to play nice. How do I test my negative assumption?
Mm-hmm.
Clearing negative emotions. I'm mad. They shouldn't have done it. He's a jerk. He wants to get me. I'm upset. I can't test my assumptions as long as my negative emotions are blocking the way.
Mm-hmm.
Building effective relationships. That's number 3. How do I get and give feedback? So now I'm mad. He's a jerk. How do I go and say, stop your jerky behavior? That's not going to work. So what do I do? What do I do so that I feel satisfied? A lot of times people go and try to test, go and give somebody feedback and either give it wrong or they'll say something general. Instead of saying, I did not like the way you gave me comments on my paper. They say, some of the things that happen in the class bother me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nobody can use that information.
Right.
Bother. How do I even ask you a question to figure out? So I have in the back of my mind the thing that's bugging me, but I'm scared to get it out because I get it out, I'll end up saying you're a jerk. And so the skill set then is how to do that. That's the building relationships. And then bridging differences. If it's a teacher, student, you have power. If it's a boss, employee, it's a power disequilibrium. If it's in many organizations, if it's a male head and a female subordinate, then we got the gender differential and then we got the power differential going on. If it's race, same difference. I have been the only Black person in so many groups, or one of very few. So we got the race. I'm a minority in numbers. I'm a minority in my attitude because I'm a change agent person. And everybody wants to follow the yellow brick road. And I'm about, let's bust the whole thing open. So I got it. So we have that going. So we have all of these differentials. So how do we bridge? Introvert and extrovert. Yeah. I don't like to talk. I would like to listen. But if I don't talk, I don't get my ideas across. So how do we bridge all of those differences? So that's 4. Then conscious use of self. How do I show up? How do I know how I'm showing up? How do I use my power if I think I have none? How do I use my power if I have the most in the room, but I know that I can't get it done without their cooperation? And then the last one is initiating change.
That's awesome. Well, I have dropped the link to the book and to your website in the chat for those for everyone to click on and check out. It's also up on the screen, Leading Consciously. Jean, this is such a nice, fun hour. Getting to talk to you is always so helpful and enlightening. I love and I'm so inspired by all the work that you're doing. And again, it's like one of those things, I'm always in awe of those who have the facilities and the understanding of what it takes and can break down what it takes to create change and then empower others to go out there and do that. So those of you who are listening today, I hope you feel a little bit more informed and inspired on how to take that next step and start to initiate change and how to think about it one more step at a time. Jean, do you have any last minute thoughts before we let everybody go?
This is real important because of the whole concept of initiating change. We do not empower others. We facilitate them empowering themselves.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. Awesome. I concur with that completely. Wonderful.
People talk about empowering others, but when you set out to empower others, you end up trying to tell them, you can do it, and that's not empowering at all.
Yeah. No, that's right. No, you're 100% spot on. I love that. You always go a little bit deeper and a little more thoughtful. Thank you so much, Jean. This was a lot of fun. Everybody really enjoyed the conversation today, it sounds like. So again, if you guys want to reach out to Jean, you can do so. I assume it's cool for you to reach out on LinkedIn and or check out our website, check out our book. I know some of you said you're excited to read it. I'm going to grab a copy as well.
And check out my Pathfinders program if any of this is interesting to you.
Awesome. Well, Jean, again,
thank you so much for having me. This has been delightful, and you have great questions for me.
Oh, good. I'm glad. I enjoy doing this. This is my favorite day of the week, getting to sit down and just spend an hour with amazing people. So I appreciate your time. Awesome. All right. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Everybody who's listening.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.